All right, good evening. So tonight's essential questions are, what are stem cells and why are they important? And what are the different type of stem cells? And so if you might have mentioned or remember from earlier today, I mentioned that stem cells have a potential to cure a lot of diseases. So we'll understand what they are and all the different types of stem cells. All right, so you do not have to write this slide down, but I'm going to discuss stem cells as solving a problem. So the problem is that certain cells in the human body don't regenerate new cells after they are fully developed. For instance, nerve cells and muscle cells in your body, they don't undergo mitosis nearly as quick or at all like your certain skin cells do. So if those cells get damaged and die, mitosis will not produce new cells to replace them. This can lead to lifelong and permanent conditions such as paralysis and dementia. So stem cell research aims to solve this problem by growing new cells in a lab to replace the damaged ones. But how do they do it? So let's review. In all eukaryotic multicellular organisms, so that includes us, all start out as one singleized fertilized cell, and then those cells grow and divide, and they differentiate into all the different types of cells we have in our body, such as liver cells, kidney cells, blood cells, and brain cells. So how do these cells go from one cell and become many different types of cells? So this is a process called cell differentiation. So cells become more specialized, and this is known as differentiation. So certain cells will grow and divide and become pancreas cells. Some of them will grow and divide and differentiate into neural cells, and so on and so forth. So let's review about what happens after fertilization. So after 5 days, 5 days after fertilization, so after you get that single cell, you have a mass of a few cells called a blastocyst. And these stem cells exist inside the blastocyst in what's called an inner cell mass. And these inner cell mass cells, those are what differentiate into all the various cells that we have. And stem cells exist in all developing eukaryotic organisms, not just humans. So animal cells, their embryos have, their embryos have stem cells. In plants as well, inside the seed, the developing seed of a plant, there are stem cells in there as well. All embryos have stem cells that differentiate into other cell tissues later on in development. So a stem cell is an unspecialized cell, so it hasn't differentiated yet. And so stem cells can be induced to branch out into any different type of cell in the organism's body. So they're kind of like the starter cells. They haven't differentiated yet. So since stem cells can turn into almost any type of cell from the human body, scientists want to use them to help with many diseases. So for instance, nerve cells that have been extremely damaged can be grown from stem cells to help heal paralysis patients by growing new nerve cells that normally wouldn't grow in your body after they've been damaged. So there's some important vocabulary to understand when understanding stem cells. The first type of stem cell is called a totipotent stem cell, and totipotent means that it can become almost any cell. So totipotents have a large capacity to differentiate into almost any type of cell in the organism's body. Now pluripotent, similar to totipotent, but they have some limitations into what type of cells they can become into. So where do we find stem cells? And so there are two different types of stem cells, and there's different ways that they are used in medicine. And so we're going to understand why some of these stem cells are controversial. So the two different types of stem cells are somatic stem cells and embryonic stem cells. So somatic stem cells come from adult cells that have limited types of cells that they can grow into. So we can harvest somatic stem cells without harming the individual. We can harvest these somatic stem cells and we can grow them in a petri dish in lab, and we can differentiate those stem cells into various different types of cells for the human body. However, it's very limited into the types of cells they can grow into. So with somatic stem cells, it's found in developed tissue of the adult cells. Your body has them, and your body uses them to replace cells that are lost due to normal wear and tear. And like I mentioned before, have very limited different types of cells that it can differentiate into. Now there are some limitations of using somatic cells. So yes, you can harvest somatic cells from a human body, an adult body, without harming the individual. However, some limitations are that adults have a very small number of these somatic cells. There's very limited amount. It's also hard to find somatic cells in an adult that are not damaged. And then the somatic cells must come from the individual itself, or else the body will reject other people's somatic stem cells. So let's talk about the other type of stem cells, embryonic stem cells. So these are found in the blastocyst of a developing embryo. So this is 5 to 7 days after fertilization. So after the sperm and the egg join, 5 to 7 days later, you get a blastocyst, which is just a mass of cells. But remember, this is a developing embryo, so later on it does eventually develop into a human baby. These stem cells are pluripotent, so they can become almost any type of cell. They have a lot of potential to turn into any type of cell. So how can we use embryonic stem cells? Well, remember, they are pluripotent. Unlike somatic adult stem cells, they can become almost any cell. There's very little limitations to what they can become. And we can use the tissue you grow from stem cells to treat diseases. So for instance, we can harvest those stem cells from that 5 to 7 day old blastocyst, and we can use certain drugs and chemicals to differentiate those cells into the cells that we want. So for instance, if we were treating a blood disorder, we can turn it into blood cells, or if we were treating paralysis, we can turn it into neurons, or if we were treating, for instance, a organ failure such as livers, we can turn it into liver cells. And we are also developing new ways to grow skin tissue and other appendages such as ears and noses and other areas of your skin. So why are embryonic stem cells controversial? Well, remember, they come from a fertilized human embryo that is only 5 to 7 days old. But after those stem cells are harvested, that embryo will no longer develop into a human baby. And so there's some controversy in there. Should we stop life at this stage? Should we even tinker with this? So some things to think about tomorrow are how are embryonic stem cells controversial, but somatic stem cells are not? And then also, what is the value in treating disease? How should society place this value of treating diseases? I want you to interact with your notes. Make sure you do your 2 questions in summary, and there is no Google form to fill out tonight.